The sun cast a golden hue over the sprawling grounds of Queen's Elite Academy, an all-girls secondary school nestled in the heart of Abuja. The school was renowned for its academic excellence, and its students were the daughters of some of Nigeria's most prominent families. Among them was Binta, a 16-year-old girl whose name was synonymous with brilliance and beauty. Binta's rise to prominence wasn't just because of her impeccable grades, but also her striking appearance. Her skin, the color of rich cocoa, glowed under the sun, and her thick, black hair was always neatly braided into intricate patterns that drew admiration. Her almond-shaped eyes sparkled with intelligence, and her wide, confident smile could brighten the gloomiest day. Binta's parents, Chief and Mrs. Macaulay, had high hopes for their daughter. As the only child of a wealthy businessman and a university professor, the pressure to succeed was immense. If you are just joining my channel for the first time and have not subscribed, please help to subscribe. Like and share this channel, as this act of love would encourage us to write and create more engaging stories for your view. We appreciate that and love you for doing that. Now let us quickly run back to our story. Every morning, as the school bus pulled up to their mansion in Metama, Binta's mother would remind her, "Remember, you carry the Macaulay name. Excellence is not an option. It is a requirement." At school, Binta was the star student. Teachers praised her diligence, and her classmates often turned to her for help with their studies. She was a role model, the epitome of grace and intellect. But this pedestal she stood on was a fragile one, and cracks began to form the day she crossed paths with Chinelo. Chinelo was the complete opposite of Binta. Where Binta was disciplined and focused, Chinelo was bold and carefree. She was known for her sharp tongue and mischievous nature. The two girls had little in common, but a chance encounter after school set off a chain of events that would change Binta's life forever. One afternoon, as Binta sat in the library revising for an upcoming exam, Chinelo sauntered in. She dropped her bag on the table with a loud thud, startling Binta. "Binta the bookworm," Chinelo teased, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Binta looked up, frowning. "Do you need something, Chinelo?" Chinelo smirked. "Relax. I'm just here to chat. You know, you could take life a little less seriously. All this studying, it's too much. I don't have the luxury of taking life less seriously." Binta replied curtly. Chinelo leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You're so uptight. Don't you realize there are easier ways to stay on top?" "What are you talking about?" Binta asked, confused. "Look at you, Binta. You're beautiful, smart, and the teachers adore you. If I were you, I wouldn't waste time killing myself with books. Use what you have," Chinelo said, winking. Binta stared at her, stunned. Chinelo's words lingered in her mind long after she left. That night, as she lay in bed, she found herself studying her reflection in the mirror. Was Chinelo right? Could her looks give her an edge she had never considered? The following day, Binta decided to test Chinelo's theory. She wore her uniform slightly differently, tying her scarf in a way that accentuated her features. She applied a touch of lip gloss, something she had never done before. As she walked into the classroom, the reaction was immediate. Her classmates whispered, and even some teachers seemed to notice her more than usual. In the weeks that followed, Binta began to experiment with her newfound influence. She smiled more at teachers, complimented their outfits, and found that they were more lenient with her. When she forgot her homework one day, Mr. Agbo, her biology teacher, simply smiled and said, "You're my best student, Binta." "I'm sure it won't happen again." Encouraged, Binta began to push boundaries. Her grades remained high, but she found herself studying less and relying more on charm. Chinelo watched with a sly smile, but not everyone was impressed. Amaka, Binta's closest friend, noticed the change and confronted her one afternoon. "Binta, what's going on with you?" Amaka asked, her voice filled with concern. "Nothing. Why do you ask?" Binta replied, feigning innocence. "You've changed. You're not the same person who used to stay up late studying with me. Now, you're different," Amaka said. Binta shrugged. "I'm just finding a balance. Not everything has to be about hard work, you know." Amaka shook her head. "Be careful, Binta. Shortcuts have consequences." Binta brushed off her friend's warning, but deep down, a small voice in her head agreed with Amaka. She silenced it, choosing instead to focus on the praise she was receiving. One day, during a staff meeting, whispers about Binta reached the ears of the school's principal, Mrs. Okoh. Concerned, she decided to investigate. Meanwhile, Binta's newfound confidence led her to befriend teachers outside the classroom. Mr. Agbo, in particular, seemed overly fond of her. He often called her into his office under the guise of offering extra tutoring. Binta found his attention flattering but harmless. However, rumors began to swirl. Some students claimed to have seen Binta and Mr. Agbo together after school hours. Others speculated that her high grades were a result of favoritism. Chinelo, who had once encouraged Binta, now watched with jealousy and amusement as the rumors spread. The situation escalated when one student, Chidima, claimed to have overheard a private conversation between Binta and Mr. Agbo. The story reached Mrs. Okoh, who called Binta to her office. "Binta, there have been disturbing rumors about you and Mr. Agbo." The principal began, her tone serious. Binta's heart raced. "Ma, it's not true. I've never done anything inappropriate." Mrs. Okoh frowned. "Whether or not it's true, your behavior has raised questions. I expect better from you." The meeting ended, but the damage was done. Binta's reputation was tarnished. Her classmates began to avoid her, and teachers became distant. Even her parents noticed a change in her demeanor. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, Binta realized she had lost everything she had worked so hard for. She resolved to make things right. But the path to redemption would be far from easy, as Binta prepared to face the consequences of her actions. She had no idea that a storm was brewing, one that would test her resilience and character in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, Binta walked into the school gates with her head held high, even though her heart was heavy. She was determined to regain her dignity, but as she entered her classroom, the whispers and side glances from her classmates were deafening. Even Amaka, her closest friend, seemed hesitant to meet her gaze. At break time, Binta decided to confront Chinelo. She found her sitting under the large mango tree in the courtyard, surrounded by her usual crew of admirers. "Chinelo, we need to talk," Binta said firmly. Chinelo raised an eyebrow, a sly smirk playing on her lips. "Ah, look who's gracing me with her presence. The queen herself." "Cut the sarcasm," Binta snapped. "You started all this. You filled my head with ideas about shortcuts and using my looks. Now, look where it's gotten me," Chinelo chuckled. "Oh, Binta, don't blame me for your choices. I merely suggested, and you, being the perfect Binta, decided to test the waters. How's that working out for you?" Binta clenched her fists, her anger bubbling to the surface. "You're nothing but a coward hiding behind your sarcasm. If you had any decency, you'd help me fix this mess." Chinelo stood up, her smirk replaced by a serious expression. "Fix it yourself, Binta. You wanted to play the game. Now you deal with the rules." Binta stormed away, her frustration mounting. She realized Chinelo wouldn't help her, and the weight of fixing her tarnished reputation fell squarely on her shoulders. Later that day during biology class, Mr. Agbo seemed unusually cold. He barely acknowledged Binta, and when she raised her hand to answer a question, he ignored her. The rumors had clearly reached him, and the tension in the room was palpable. After class, Binta hesitated before approaching his desk. "Sir, may I speak with you?" Mr. Agbo looked up, his expression guarded. "What is it, Binta?" "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for any trouble I've caused. I never meant for things to get out of hand," she said softly. Mr. Agbo sighed. "Binta, do you know how dangerous these rumors are? They could ruin my career." "I know, sir." "I'll do whatever it takes to clear your name," Binta replied, her voice trembling. "You should focus on clearing your own name first," he said, dismissing her with a wave. The conversation left Binta feeling more isolated than ever. As she walked back to her dormitory, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't undo the past, but she could try to make amends. That evening, as Binta sat in the library trying to focus on her studies, a figure approached her. It was Amaka. "Binta, I've been thinking," Amaka began, sitting across from her. "You made mistakes, but you're still my friend. I want to help you." Tears welled up in Binta's eyes. "Thank you, Amaka. I don't know where to start. We'll start by finding out who's spreading these rumors," Amaka said firmly. "If we can get to the root of it, we can clear your name." The two girls began to investigate, quietly gathering information from their classmates. It didn't take long for them to discover that Chidinma, the student who had claimed to overhear Binta and Mr. Agbo, was at the center of the gossip. That night, they confronted Chidinma in the dormitory. "Chidinma, we know you've been spreading lies about me," Binta said, Her voice steady but firm, Chidima's eyes widened. Lies? I only told the truth. Really? Then why do your stories keep changing? Amaka challenged. First, you said you overheard them. Then, you said you saw them together. Which one is it? Chidima stammered, her confidence wavering. I just repeated what I heard from someone else. Who? Binta demanded. Chidima hesitated before mumbling. Chinelo. Binta felt a surge of anger. She had suspected Chinelo, but hearing it confirmed was another blow. Why? Why would she do this to me? Chidima shrugged. She said you deserve to be taken down a notch. She called it karma. Binta and Amaka exchanged a look of determination. It was clear that Chinelo had orchestrated the entire situation, and they needed to confront her once and for all. The unfinished showdown. The next morning, Binta and Amaka found Chinelo by the school gate, chatting with her friends. As they approached, Chinelo's confident demeanor faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered, her smirk returning. Well, what do we have here? Chinelo drawled. We know what you've been doing, Chinelo, Binta said, her voice steady. And we're not going to let you get away with it. Chinelo laughed. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Run to the principal? Cry to your parents? Amaka stepped forward. We're going to expose you. Everyone will know how you manipulated Chidima and spread lies to ruin Binta's reputation. Chinelo's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of fear. But before she could respond, a shadow fell over the group. It was Mrs. Okoh, the principal. What's going on here? She demanded, her sharp eyes scanning their faces. The air was thick with tension as the girls stood frozen. Binta knew this was her moment of truth, but how much of the story she could reveal, and what consequences it would bring, remained uncertain. The moment of truth, Mrs. Okoh's stern gaze swept over the group, her presence commanding immediate silence. I asked a question, she said firmly. What is going on here? Binta swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She stepped forward, mustering her courage. Ma, I need to speak with you privately, she said. Mrs. Okoh's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. Come with me to my office. As they walked away, Chinelo stood frozen, her confidence evaporating. Amaka shot her a withering look before following Binta and the principal. In the office, Binta took a deep breath and began to explain everything. Her initial mistakes, the rumors, Chinelo's role in orchestrating the lies, and her own efforts to take responsibility. She held nothing back, her voice steady even as her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Mrs. Okoh listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Binta finished, the principal leaned back in her chair. Thank you for your honesty, Binta, she said, but you must understand that your actions, no matter how manipulated, have consequences. As for Chinelo, if what you say is true, she will face the appropriate disciplinary actions. I will investigate this matter thoroughly. Binta nodded, tears streaming down her face. I just want a chance to make things right. The following day, an assembly was called. Mrs. Okoh addressed the school, revealing the findings of her investigation. Chinelo's manipulative behavior and false accusations were exposed, and she was given a severe punishment, including suspension. Chidinma, though less culpable, was also reprimanded for spreading unverified rumors. As for Binta, Mrs. Okoh commended her for taking responsibility and encouraged the students to learn from her mistakes. However, she was assigned community service within the school to reflect on her choices. Though the road to regaining trust was long, Binta took it one step at a time. Amaka stood by her side, offering unwavering support. Over time, her classmates began to see her efforts and respected her for owning up to her actions and working to rebuild her reputation. With lessons learned and a newfound resolve, Binta continued her journey, wiser and stronger than before. Though scars of the past remained, they served as reminders of her resilience and the power of redemption.